Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to DDM Gaming's 10-minute deck tech. My name is Mike, and I got a question for you. What does America, Sharknado, a BB gun, and a merry-go-round all have in common? Find out in today's deck tech, where we go over Braylon and Shabrazz. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your DDM Gaming host coming in hot just to remind you that if you like what you hear, subscribe, ring the bell, like, comment, share, tell your friends. We're here for a while. Love y'all. Peace. All right, so diving right in here, we're going to start with Braylon Skyshark Rider. 3 in a red, partner with Shabrazz the Skyshark. Whenever you discard a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Braylon's Skyshark Rider, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Pay 1 red, target shark gains trample until the end of turn. We are going to be focused on pinging each opponent every time we discard a card. Shabrazz the Skyshark is 3 white-blue, partners with Braylon. Flying, whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Shabrazz the Skyshark, and you gain 1 life. You can pay Azorius Hybrid. Target human gains flying until the end of turn. So the objective of the deck here is for us to effectively wheel relentlessly until our entire table is dead. There is a competitive list out there. It was featured by the CEDH cast. Link will be in the description below. For this deck tech, we will be sticking to a casual list. It's a little bit slower, but it is a ton of fun. So sit down, relax. First set of wheels that we're going to go through are the sorcery speed wheels. Starting out with Khorvath's Fury. 4 in a red. For each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend discards all cards from their hand, then draws that many +1. Khorvath's Fury deals damage to each foe equal to the number of cards in their hand. So this is a way for us to discard our entire hand, deal a ton of damage out, Braylon on board, and then to draw all of the cards. Second big sorcery wheel is going to be Windfall. 2 in a blue. Each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. It's low on the mana curve. It's very consistent. It's used in virtually every wheel deck that exists. It's an oldie but goodie. An exciting one coming out of Innistrad block is Collective Defiance. 1 red has Escalate 1. Choose 1 or more. Target player discards all cards in his or her hand, then draws that many cards. Collective Defiance deals 4 damage to target creature. Collective Defiance deals 3 damage to target opponent. Now for every one of these that we choose, the first one is just the CMC of the card. Then we can add an additional one for 1 mana. Fantastic card that's come out of the Modern Horizons set is Echo of Aeons. This is the budget time twister. It is 4 blue. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards. It has flashback for 2 in a blue. This card will enable us to shuffle our hand, our graveyard, draw a bunch of cards, and basically reset the field for us, which would be fantastic. Another one that we have on here is Winds of Change. 1 red. Each player counts the cards in his or her hand, shuffles those cards into his or her deck, then draws that many cards. Another oldie but a goodie is Wheel of Fortune. This one is an expensive card. There are alternatives in things like Reforge the Soul and such that can be put into this list. This one's on here just if you have it, run it. If not, there are alternatives, and there also are in the lists included below in the description. Wheel of Fortune is 2 in a red. All players must discard their hands and draw 7 new cards. We also are running 1 split card in here, Commit to Memory. Commit is 3 in a blue instant. Put target spell or non-land permanent into its owner's library second from the top. Memory is the wheel side of it, which is 4 blue, has Aftermath. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into their library, then draw 7 cards. So again, it's a sorcery speed time twister that can only be done out of your graveyard. In this deck, we're running 2 instant speed wheels. The first one is Tolarian Winds. 1 in a blue, discard your hand, then draw that many cards. At instant speed, this will enable us to filter out our entire hand, deal a ton of damage per the usual. The second wheel instant is Fateful Showdown. 2 red, deals damage to target creature or player equal to the number of cards in your hand. Then discard all of the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. This card is super good and can deal a ton of damage. You're paying 4 mana to possibly deal 7 damage or more to a player's face, and also getting those discard triggers off of Braylon to deal a ton of damage that way. So we are doing a fair amount of rummaging and looting in this deck. These are things like draw cards, then discard cards, or discard and then draw. Examples of this are Faithless Looting, 1 red, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. It does have flashback for 2 and a red, which is relevant in this deck and helps us get that extra bit of damage and to dig a little deeper to effectively storm out. Another card that we have in this pile is Cathartic Reunion. 1 and a red. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard 2 cards, then draw 3 cards. It's going to trigger Braylon. We will get extra damage in, then we'll be able to refill our hand for the cards that we discarded and utilize that to continue our Storm Wheel effects. Another one is Thrill of Possibility. It's 1 and a red. Discard a card, draw 2 cards. Instant speed. One of my favorite versions of this is Frantic Search. 2 and a blue, instant speed. Draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. Untap up to 3 lands. So if this card resolves, draw 2, then discard 2 for free. Great effects, super good in this deck, and I am a big fan of it. So what's our ultimate objective with this deck? We can sit down and have Braylon on board and ping for 2-3 damage at a time, go back and forth, bounce around, and really kind of take the game into that direction. Or we can do things at a little bit of a quicker pace. Now, there is a competitive brew out there, and this is where we started kind of delving into that a little bit. Again, we are a casual brew, but we are running Curiosity effects in this deck. Curiosity is an enchantment that costs 1 blue mana, enchant creature. Whenever that creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. This is notorious for winning with Niv Mizzet and things of that nature, where you draw a card, deal a damage, and whenever you deal a damage, you draw a card. So the loops back on itself. Our objective here is to cast Curiosity or Ophidian Eye onto Braylon. Ophidian Eye is 2 and a blue enchantment aura with flash. Enchant creature, whenever it deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Braylon is the focus of the deck here. Shabraz is great to get in that damage, but our real objective here is to effectively be almost a Storm Brew. We want to be able to take Curiosity and Ophidian Eye effects all the way to the end. The competitive list actually utilizes Curiosity and Ophidian Eye loops at the end of the turn, where you discard down to hand size. Well, when you discard and these are on Braylon, she deals damage, which then activates these, which makes you draw more cards. So you discard down to hand size, triggers the Ophidian Eye Curiosities, back and forth they go until you kill the whole table. Now, we are trying to do that here, but we are trying to do it at a little bit more of a controlled rate, and it's not something we're necessarily digging for as much as we really just enjoy wheeling through the deck and taking a slower, casual approach. So what are some cards that can really do some great ping damage outside of Braylon? An awesome example of this, which was featured most recently in our combos with video, is Psychosis Crawler. 5 mana artifact. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand, and whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. Another example of this, like I stated before, is Niv Mizzet the Firemind. Niv Mizzet the Firemind, 2 blue, red, flying. Whenever you draw a card, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. You can tap it to draw a card if need be. Niv Mizzet Parun does the same thing with the added clause that whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you may draw a card. A third version of this effect is in Glinthorn Buccaneer. 1 red, has haste. Whenever you discard a card, Glinthorn Buccaneer deals 1 damage to each opponent. It is exactly like Braylon. So within this deck, we have a lot of really cool ways to deal damage when we're discarding cards, to deal damage when we're drawing cards, to have the Curiosity effects on board for us to cause infinite damage. This deck is extremely powerful in that regard, but like I said, it is built around a casual brew. We'll keep the CEDH deck list down below, as well as the casual deck list down below. I think this is a great example of how you can have a very powerful casual list as well as a very powerful CEDH list. Shout out to the CEDH cast, especially Braden, who has been working on this list for several weeks now, and it's really something special. I'll link their video down in the description below. With this casual list, we also have some things in here that are just treats, just fun things to have. Things like Surly Badgersaur. Surly Badgersaur is out of the C20 decks. It has a sort of waist knot appearance to it. Whenever you discard a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Surly Badgersaur. Whenever you discard a land card, create a treasure token. Whenever you discard a non-creature, non-land card, Surly Badgersaur fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So Surly Badgersaur can remove mana dorks. It can create treasures for you. It can just get simply bigger to fight larger creatures as the time goes on. In casual pods, we do tend to see creatures like Galtas and all of these very large creatures. This is a good way for you to maybe cause some damage over time and try to get that last bit of fight damage in to remove those creatures. Another great example of a treat card for this list is Chandra Flamecaller. Planeswalker for 4 red, has a +1 to create 2 3/1 red elemental creature tokens with haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Usually this is a main phase 1. Use them in attacks and get your damage in that way. The 0 effect is what she's really in here for. Discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many +1. So she has a wheel on board that you can activate every turn in main phase. Fantastic card. I really love her in this brew. I think it's a great fit. Another card that we have in here is Tectonic Reformation. Tectonic Reformation says each land card in your hand has cycling 1 red mana. You can also cycle this card for 2 generic mana, which means pay 2, discard it, and then draw a card. Cycling is kind of a incidental effect in this list. It is slower than what we're trying to do with the wheels, but it's still effective and enables us to get rid of those lands that we may draw in these wheels that we're doing. Really a good card, really a nice add in here. Another card that comes straight out of Ikoria is Riel the Everwise. 1 blue-red. She gets +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards for the first time each turn, draw that many cards. She is a way for us to say, hey, I just discarded my hand. It's my first wheel of the turn, so I'm going to trigger Riel. I'm going to draw X amount of cards off the wheel that I discarded, and then I will finish the draws from the actual wheel. This is a great way to just fill up your hand double the size that it was originally for 1 time each turn. Fantastic card. We also have Alhammarret's Archive in here, 5 mana legendary artifact. The important part for this deck is if you would draw a card except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. Again, this is a lot like the Riel effect, except this effect happens every time you draw the card. It's not on the first wheel that you do. So your wheels are now doubling your hand size as you go about it. Super powerful card. Love it in the deck. It's in the movie. A card that's super powerful that came out of Theros Beyond Death is Underworld Breach. 1 and a red enchantment. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost, plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Underworld Breach. Underworld Breach is a silly card. I will tell you that right out of the gate. If you want to take this deck down a power level, take Underworld Breach out. But if you want to keep it at a very high power level, keep this card in here. We are wheeling in this deck, not just drawing. So we are fueling the ability for Underworld Breach to consistently recast things like Winds of Change, Windfall, Wheel of Fortune. All of these cards enable us to put cards into our graveyard, then draw a new hand. We can recast it on the Underworld Breach turn to really close out a game super quickly. Our last treat in this deck is a treat just for you, not for your opponents. Narset, Parter of Veils, 1 blue. Static effect, each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. This card is a powerhouse in Opus Thief competitive decks. It effectively says when you wheel, your hand gets refilled completely, your opponent's hand gets 1 card. When they draw that 1 card, if you wheel again, they cannot draw an additional card that turn. So they sit there now and you've officially begun to win the game. This deck is super strong. Like I said, we will have the competitive list as well as the casual list down below. I hope you love the deck tech. I've had a great time goldfish in this deck. I've also had a great time hearing stories from people that have played this deck, the competitive version and the casual version. If you want to see the casual version in action, this is a list from Commander Versus. It's featured on one of their newest episodes. I will put the link down in the description below as well. If you like what you hear today, don't forget to sub the channel, ring the bell. It's a free way to support us and continue our growth here on DDM Gaming, and we can continue to bring you these super awesome episodes every week. Thank you so much for your time, and as always, enjoy your games.